I want to welcome everyone to the third Mayor's Emergency Response Roundtable as we continue to work together to meet all the challenges of this COVID-19 virus. One of the things I think we've said since the onset is that things would be rapidly changing, and that's exactly what they are, and that's one of the reasons that we established this roundtable, to hear from you and to communicate to you as our citizens the things that we're doing to respond, to hear your suggestions of how to respond. Many of you are responding or asking your questions or making suggestions or making us aware of your challenges through email, and we certainly do appreciate that. Others of you are contacting me directly through emails and so forth, and or contacting other city council members. And we encourage you to continue to do all three so that we can establish these roundtables to address your major concerns. So most recently, as you all know, the governor just issued an executive order 55, and so many of us are trying to determine what exactly that means and how is it changing our lives, daily lives, our professional lives, and so forth. And so we're going to attack that question first, and I'm going to go and I'm going to start with our city manager, Mr. Price, and I'm going to also ask Health Director Nancy Welch as well as to how that's how it is affecting our lives and how we are enforcing those changes. So I will turn over to our city manager, Mr. Price.
Thank you, Mayor West. So we've gotten this question a lot with regard to the executive order, and actually the past two executive orders, and really the order yesterday, not much changed. So we spent the better part of the last 2 weeks sort of ramping up for this. It was kind of anticipated. So we've started to push as many services that we can online. Essential services continue to remain unchanged. The rest of our services we're delivering remotely, doing a lot of teleworking, flexible schedules, maximizing social distancing. So really the most immediate thing we did is just continued to ramp that up. I asked the directors that, take any lessons that they've learned over the past couple weeks. If there's more things we can do remotely, to continue to do those so that we continue to move folks out of our facilities to the greatest extent possible. For folks that can't be working remotely, to try to maximize social distancing. The one probably service delivery thing that has changed in the past 24 hours, a little bit related to the executive order, is with regards to libraries. So we've really done a lot to try to continue to provide library services, both online materials and the actual physical books. We had been offering for the past couple weeks the curbside delivery pickup, so folks would check out materials, be able to come in and pick those up from a curbside location. We have suspended that operation, and as I've said on the past several times that we've chatted about this and the messages we put out, we're using the best available data. And the professional libraries associations recommend at this point libraries not be operating. Libraries was not included as one of the essential services in the governor's order. We have employees that are concerned about the handling of the materials, both going out the door and coming in the door. And so I'm trying to continue to use the best available data from the professionals. So we have decided to suspend that service. But again, as we continue to gather data on best practices, look at what other people are doing, I'm open to continuing to modify our services. But at this time, that's the one, that's probably the most significant change that people would see coming out of yesterday.
Another area I didn't talk to you about, but immediately after the governor's press conference, the mayors of Virginia Beach and Norfolk and I got on a conference call and talked about recreational facilities. Of course, they have beaches, and they were talking about how to enforce what the governor was trying to achieve there. I've tried to talk to golf courses in the area and about how they can achieve what the governor was talking about. And we talked last time about our parks. So you want to just reemphasize what we're doing in our parks?
Yeah, thank you for that. That's been a little bit of a challenge for us because we're trying to minimize people being in close quarters, so get that physical distancing. But the governor continues to reiterate, and we promote this as well. We want people to stay active and healthy. So in big open spaces for people to enjoy our trails and our passive recreation opportunities, that continues unchanged. It's really things like the playgrounds and the court facilities that we've had to close, and we've marked some off, and we'll continue to mark those off. Really just trying to minimize larger groups of people getting together in tighter spaces. We've actually had pretty good voluntary compliance, so that's really what we strive for, is try to get the message out, and whenever we see something that we're a little concerned with, when we talk to folks, pretty good response to be able to get people to voluntarily comply. And we've not yet had to take any measures beyond that. So I'm actually very pleased about that. And I ask community to continue to work with us on that. We're trying to do the things to make sure that folks stay safe, but still have the opportunities to get in some recreation and exercise.
Yeah, and to that point, I think in the order there was some mention of a Class 1 misdemeanor, and certainly there could be more drastic actions for reinforcing or for enforcing these things. But one of the things I'm telling people, and I'm sure you are too, is the more that we voluntarily comply, the more that we keep the numbers to 10 and keep our distances to 6 feet, the less we will have to mandate changes. So I think it's important that people continue to exercise, go to the parks, go to the recreation things, but still continue to use those principles that we're so often told about.
Yeah, I agree completely. And the thing I would ask the community is, please do not put our first responders in a position where they have to respond to that type of event, where their resources are really needed elsewhere, and we just ask you to work with us on that to keep yourselves, the community, and our first responders safe.
Thank you. And Dr. Welch, you indicated previously that the health department also had the ability to take actions to certain types of businesses if they refuse to comply. Would you summarize that again, please?
Sure. And let me just take a moment to emphasize from the public health perspective, I'm really excited that our citizens are seeing all the wonderful ways and things that we have where you can go outside, the Jordan Bridge, the Oak Grove Park, and the views and the experiences and all of those are wonderful. But as has already been iterated, I don't want us to subject them unwittingly to an increased risk. And this is where the 6 feet apart is so very, very important. I sincerely hope that as people have discovered these new things in Chesapeake, they'll keep it up, so we can continue it, and then we can actually be in even closer contact with more people afterwards. In direct response to your question, Mayor, there are a couple areas where we're primarily involved, as I've mentioned before. One is restaurants. I will say I'm very pleased to say that education is working out well with our restaurants. We want our restaurants to stay. I'm a great believer. I'm also a business individual. We want our businesses to operate. I almost order out almost every day and just choose a different restaurant. So it's important that we maintain that economic component. And they're being very compliant in terms of doing the takeout, the call, and not having 10 or more folks. And any that we have encountered who are not compliant, they're very responsive to our staff talking with them. We don't want to have to issue the legal kinds of means that we have to do that. There are also, we're getting calls now about salons that are remaining open. And of course, in a salon, they're closer contact. So that is something that is of importance to us. So we are working with them as well. And I will say, I see Steve is here from Economic Development. I've been very pleased with how a number of the businesses have responded. I went to Lowe's, if I could say a name here, the other day, and they had lines on the floor The manager even came and moved folks back if they were beyond the lines of where they should be apart, and they had plexiglass. So I was very pleased with the responses. And Kempsville Building just sent me a plan that was very well thought out in terms of protecting their employees and protecting any who come in. So I think that they're catching on. It's in our hands as to what we do. And I don't mean ours, health department, I mean ours within the community. And I think they're taking that responsibly.
Well, thank you. That's definitely good to hear. I think as citizens, you know, I think we talked about sometimes I've heard conflicting stories that the Jordan Bridge or the Oak Grove Park or whatever our facility is, or sometimes I hear some people saying that, you know, there's plenty of space or there are not many people there. Then I've heard others say, well, it's crowded. Well, you know, that's just the way it is. Sometimes it's going to be crowded, sometimes it's not. And so I would encourage our citizens to say, if you go to a place and it is crowded, just change your plans, come back later, or find another place. And so yeah, I think the more that we use common sense and make those kind of decisions, the better off we all are. So let me stay with you, Dr. Welch, and ask you about a topic that's on a lot of people's mind right now, particularly the number of cases locally that we have in Chesapeake, and why we're not able to be more specific about who and where those cases are. Could you address that issue, please?
Always glad to address that because I know there's a lot of confusion about it. I will say that people can get the numbers by going on the VDH website, but I would tell you that when you go on the VDH website, it's never up to date because it's updated once a day, and the number of numbers change. But let me emphasize beyond that this is not, the numbers that you see is only the number of cases that tested positive of those who fit the criteria to have the test done. So in no way do they represent the prevalence of the virus within our community. We have to remember that many, and some would say up to 80%, of individuals who have the virus are either asymptomatic or have such mild symptoms that they don't consider themselves ill. But these people are still contagious. They can still spread it. And COVID is much more contagious than flu. And for those who do get it, it has a higher death rate. So we cannot make any kind of assessment about the prevalence of the virus within our community by the tests that meet the very specific criteria. Either they have symptoms, or they've been exposed to someone, or they are a frontline healthcare provider. Those are primarily the criteria that are used. So we need to behave as if two things. One, everyone you're in contact with may be contagious, and so you protect yourself from them. Or two, and people don't think about this, we may be contagious. And so how do we prevent transmission? And I think in some regards, that's where the executive order came out that we mentioned, the stay-at-home order. It's as if your home is your face mask. It is your shield. And that is a very safe shield to stay within that, except, of course, when you walk on the Jordan Bridge or go to the Oak Grove Park. But it is the best way to be sure that you are not exposed or you do not expose other persons, because we don't know who may have it because so many are asymptomatic or only mild symptoms.
You know, just like our tendency to gather where people are, we tend to flock where people are. We have to fight that tendency and go where people aren't. And we also have this inclination to put some sort of value on a number, a batting average, or how many, you know, it doesn't matter what the batting average is if a person hits a home run at the right time of the game, right? So in this case, it's the same. We tend to feel at ease if the number's low. We tend to panic when the number is high, when we should just be looking at it as it's a number. It reflects the number of people that were tested, which has nothing to do with how you should be reacting. So thank you for clarifying that, and I hope that people will think a little bit more about pushing for that number, although, as you said, it's available. Look at it and take it for what it is.
Right, it is available, it's not mapped out. We will never map it out because it gives a false impression. And I don't want people to get a false sense of security. That is vital in everything that we do. And every time I repeat how common asymptomatic contagiousness is with this virus, we do not want to have any sense of false security that we are fine with people who have no symptoms. We only want to avoid those with symptoms. That is a definite false security and puts us and our vulnerable population at risk.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So there's no question that COVID-19 is hitting every aspect of society, both individually and economically. So I've asked our Director of Economic Development, Stephen Wright, to join us today to talk about ways that the business community are meeting these challenges and what's being done to help them weather the crisis. Stephen, we know it's bad, but can you put some numbers behind the impact?
Well, first of all, thank you, Mayor, for having me. And yes, this is very bad. We are setting records in the economy, both nationally and statewide, and I'm sure even here regionally. We're setting records that we really don't want to set. We're seeing unprecedented unemployment claims. I think this week they're anticipating 2.5 million nationwide. We've talked with the VEC to try to get a handle on how many businesses throughout the entire Commonwealth of Virginia are struggling. Just some stats that were shared with us yesterday. They're really about 48% of our businesses throughout the Commonwealth are really feeling little to no impact from this, which is good. But there are about 35% of our businesses that are feeling moderate impact, and they're going to be in the sectors professional services, education, manufacturing, and construction. But clearly the hardest hit is about 17% of the statewide workforce is being hit in the areas of hospitality, retail, and some of the other non-trade construction as well. So it's having an impact. It is bad, but I'm pleased to report that help is on the way.
And do you want to talk about that kind of help?
Well, yes. And maybe before I talk about the help that is on the way, I think, there are some silver linings out there. There are businesses that are hiring. In fact, right here locally, Dollar Tree is hiring in their warehouse facilities, as well as Walmart and Amazon. Not the big Amazon warehouse facility that's under construction right now in Western Branch, but some of the smaller last mile delivery services, they are hiring as well. So there are some opportunities out there for our citizens to remain employed. In terms of the help that's on the way, when the federal government passed the CARES Act, it's about $350 billion that are dedicated to helping the business community. And most of our businesses here in Chesapeake fit the category for this help. Small businesses, which is what we have more here in Chesapeake than anything else, businesses under 500 employees, that's what the federal help is really targeted towards. I can talk about a host of different programs, but I want to encourage everyone to go to the Economic Development website. It is chesapeakeva.biz. If you go to that website, right on the front page, you're going to see a button that talks about all of the resources that I'm going to mention briefly. There's a lot of detail with these, and we don't have the time to go through that today. But I do want to touch on a few of the programs that are out there to help businesses.
Could I interrupt you just 1 second?
Sure.
And you may be planning on talking about this. Maybe you want to put it off to later. That's fine. But Mr. Price and I sat in yesterday with a conference with mayors throughout the state, and Senator John Warner, he talked about he called it a $6 trillion bill that was passed, and one of the programs that he he highlighted, and we had heard before, was the SBA loans, and it's being defined and available with less attachments.
Yes.
More people eligible to apply, and pretty forgiving components to it. So
Very,
are you ready to talk about that?
I'm ready to talk about
right,
that
good.
because I know our businesses need this assistance. The first program that I'll talk about is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. That is a loan. I want to be clear about it. It is a loan, and it is eligible for businesses that, again, that are under 500 employees. There are no personal guarantees associated with this money. And the total loan amount is about $2 million. So each business can apply for a loan, $2 million. The interest rate is about 3.75%, 30-year term. Now, Mayor, you talked about some of the forgivenesses that are offered through this. If this money that you borrow from the federal government under the disaster loan program, if it is used to maintain your payroll, pay your rent, keep your business running, and keep your payroll, keep your employees on board, that money is forgivable. And the federal government will forgive those loans. Okay? Now, an important component of the disaster loan is that when you make an application for the disaster loan, you are also eligible for an emergency economic injury grant. Now, there's a big difference between a grant and a loan. Loans you have to pay back. This grant you do not have to pay back. This is a $10,000 loan. And what's more is once you make application for the loan, the emergency injury grant, that $10,000 grant, that money can be in your hands within about 3 days. The loan process is a little bit longer. It takes about 45 days for funds to actually be dispersed. But in the case of the economic injury grant, that's $10,000, usually in your hands 3 days after you make application for the loan. So again, I want to be clear. You do have to apply for the loan, but at the same time, you can request an advance, if you will, on that loan in the form of a $10,000 grant. So businesses ought to be taking advantage of that right now. Again, same requirement in terms of under 500 employees. Again, with the loan, there's no personal guarantees. Little to no collateral is required as well. So. Another program that is offered for small businesses, particularly those that already have loans through the the SBA, is the Small Business Debt Relief Program. And for those businesses that have or are getting 7A loans, 504 loans, or other SBA microloans, the Small Business Debt Relief Program will allow for a 6-month deferral of payments. Okay? So that's 6 months of payments that will be deferred on your loan. This will cover also new loans. So if you are in the process of getting a 7A or a 504 loan, the first 6 payments of that loan will be deferred from the federal government as well. Now, the last program that I want to talk about, and it's the one that I'm most excited about it because it really gets to the heart at making sure that our citizens stay employed. It's called the Paycheck Protection Program. And this is a fascinating program because it really speaks directly to employers and it gets money in your hands so that you can make payroll, so that you can keep people employed so that they can take care of their families. Again, like the other programs, it is for businesses 500 employees or less. I will say again, there are no personal guarantees on this loan. There is no collateral required at all for this loan. In terms of terms on this loan, this is going to be a, sorry, I've got my notes here. This is going to be up to a $10 million loan, $10 million, about 4%. But again, if you keep your employees and you can prove that you have kept your employees on board, this loan is forgivable as well. So there are a lot of more details to these programs that I've described. You can find them on our website. Again, that's ChesapeakeVA.biz. Go to the website, click COVID-19, and you'll get much more detail about these programs.
So one last thing about all these programs, I think the senator indicated that with such an influx, it's going to be a large response. Federal government is not known for its quick movement. So how would you advise our businesses to do now?
Well, I will tell you, the government does not move as fast as we would like them to, but this program, I think, will be very useful to our businesses. But until that money comes from the federal government, you might need to find some bridge opportunities. One of the things that we're telling businesses here is if you have an existing relationship with a bank, you need to contact your banker. Talk to them, see if you can establish or enhance a line of credit. If you have debt with that lender right now, talk to them about deferring payments. If you are leasing space, I would encourage you businesses to contact your landlord as well. Landlords understand that we're in this predicament and it's not anyone's fault. It just happened. So a lot of landlords are being very flexible and very generous in working with their tenants. So there may be a little bit of delay before this money really flows down to the businesses, but think about the grant that's available from the federal government. Again, that's a 3-day turnaround. Talk to your lender, talk to your landlord, and see if you can get a bridge to when that federal assistance comes.
And I think there was something mentioned, too, about obviously you have to deal with banks for the loans that are SBA approved. Is that correct?
That is correct. With the disaster loan, you can work with lenders that have been approved by the SBA to be SBA lenders. However, if you don't have a relationship with an existing bank or an SBA approved lender, you can contact the SBA directly, and that contact information is on our website as well.
One last thing, I do believe what was mentioned in that conference is that it was their hope that this paycheck protection money could be processed and available within 2 or 3 weeks. So that's not my promise. It was just mentioned, and hopefully that they'll be able to do that.
Well, we certainly hope so. And one of the things that I would say also, Mayor, is that a lot of these programs are designated to help the businesses, and it's certainly our hope that as these businesses receive this assistance, that it's going to help the workers as well. One of the things that we heard today on a conference call from the VEC is that for all workers that have filed for unemployment, they need to submit those claims on a weekly basis. Mm-hmm. It's not a one-time and it'll cover you for the entire time that you're unemployed. You have to submit it on a weekly basis. So we want to encourage those that have been affected to take advantage of that.
Thank you so much. Very good information. We certainly do appreciate it. I know our businesses. Yes, sir. Another point.
Mayor, I do have one very, very important point to make.
Please do.
I think as you look at the news coverage, you see a lot of concern about the availability of PPE and ventilators and things of that nature. We certainly want any business that's in Chesapeake that has access to masks, gloves, gowns, or have the ability to assist in the manufacturing of ventilators, please contact the Economic Development Department. We will put you in touch with the appropriate authorities that can make sure that if you have those items and you want to donate, we'll take care of that for you. And if you can produce ventilators that can be used here locally or even somewhere else, we'll get you in touch with the right people.
That's an excellent point. And I'll go ahead and make this point now and again later. This roundtable will be repeated this coming Thursday, and we plan on having the hospital people here to kind of give us an update of where they're going. I'm sure they'll want to address that topic as well, and steps that they're taking to prepare for the worst, along with our schools giving us an update. So I'm glad to see the business. And look, the business community in Chesapeake, they're phenomenal. I'm hearing of things that they're doing to help working with the faith community and our city to provide meals for kids that it would typically get them at the schools, money raised, and it's just as usual, our business community is stepping up when we need them, and we need to do all we can. And I know your department is doing that. You're great for that. Your whole team is working with the city to keep the information flowing, and I just want to thank you and appreciate all the efforts that you're making. So our last topic, I've asked voter registrar Mary Lynn Pinkerman to join us again today to discuss the upcoming May 5th election. I know there haven't been any changes, but if you would just sort of give us some scenarios that may occur.
Okay, thank you for having me, Mayor West. Yes, there have not been any decisions, unfortunately. We are all having very sleepless nights thinking of the different scenarios of what may happen. As I mentioned the last time, the registrars and the electoral board are really pushing for an all absentee ballot voting experience to eliminate the human contact, to eliminate having to go to the polls when we can't gather right now. Absentee's always been around, and it's always been available 45 days before any election. But unless someone is going out of town or just physically can't be in the area, they usually don't think to do it. But that's what we want to get the word out, that despite what may come down the pike and what the decision may be as far as Election Day, let's go ahead and be proactive. Get your ballot, get it voted, get it back so that you're not depending on the outcome of the decision. And it's really out of our hands. It's out of the Department of Elections' hand. It's in the hands of the governor and Attorney General as to what's going to happen on Election Day.
Well, I know you're on top of things. I know you are anxious about how to do this, because we ultimately we want to make sure that people have access and that it's a fair election. I know everybody in my household has already
Yes, we
done
have
their,
yours counted.
Yeah, we're all counted, so I'm encouraging and hoping everyone will. It's a pretty easy process, and so it's good to know.
I looked at your return rate, and it was a 1 week for yourself and your wife. We
Yeah.
discussed hers as well the last time. 1 week from the time you went online and asked for the ballot, for us to get the ballot to you by mail and for you to get it back to us by mail, and we had it back in a week. So it really can be a smooth process. There are several ways to do it. You took advantage of the quickest way, which is online. But there are other ways to do it. We have a paper application that you can fill out and return via fax, email, or by regular mail, and then we'll send the ballot to you. And what happens, just to kind of take that mystique out of the process, is that you'll get a packet in the mail with all the information in it, and we have the regular directions that State Board provides, but then we also have a little cheat sheet if you're really not into reading the directions, which most of us are not. Just walking you through the process, making sure you don't accidentally miss a step. You'll have your ballot in a sealed envelope. You'll take it out, you'll vote it, and then you seal it back in another envelope, and you have to fill out some information on there and have a witness sign it. We get a lot of questions about, do they need to come to our office for a witness? Absolutely not. Someone in your house can witness that they saw that you voted that ballot, you put it in the envelope, and then you just put it in a return envelope, and it comes back to us to be counted on Election Day. But we do log in which ones have been received so that you can have that reassurance that, yeah, my ballot's there, it's waiting, and it will be counted on Election Day.
Well, it certainly is an easy, smooth process, but I know it puts a lot of strain on your department, but certainly appreciate, again, what you were doing. I do want to thank all of our guests here today. As I said at the beginning, this is a fast-moving, changing situation, and we will continue to provide as accurate information as we possibly can and address as many issues as we possibly can. And I think, as the manager said earlier, as things adjust, change, and data becomes more available, there certainly we would react and make maybe different decisions or make different changes. So continue to go to the city's website, to the social media, along with Chesapeake, Virginia Health Department and the U.S. Census for Disease Control for information that you can really depend on. So we'll be back again Thursday, April the 2nd, with another edition of the Roundtable. My guests will be, as I said earlier, from Chesapeake Regional Hospital and Chesapeake Public Schools, and we will discuss changing times for them as well. Thank you for joining us.